Your Honor, this is another recording I can represent to the court. This only contains Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard's voices.
What things have you been doing?
Working on these things, not doing this sort of thing, trying to change something. Yes. Last several times we've discussed.
Hence, screaming when I spilt wine accidentally on you for falling asleep, and screaming in front of my kids and freaking Jack out. And that's trying. That fucked him up, you know.
I'm sorry I fucked your son up.
No, it weirded him out. He'd never.
I'm so sorry I fucked your kids up.
You didn't fuck my kids up, but it was pretty fucking weird for him, you know.
Because I jumped up and screamed because I wanted. Well, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm really surprised he's. So we're going for the counselor. So I'm sure that's terrifying.
I don't need your
No.
your clever comebacks. No. You think you're controlling yourself. You think you're controlling yourself.
Your characters become so clear, especially when you use them. It's embarrassing for you. I'm going to walk away now because you're actually making me see you even worse. And believing me, I'm not going to be calling you at 3 o'clock in the morning after I've had an Ambien and think, I'm going to just fucking forgive and move on. Trust me. It is gross how you're using your kids. I've done nothing but be there for them in a good way. And if you take that for granted, fine. Fine. You're right. Meet a woman who would not jump up and scream if she'd been spilled on 3 times in a row. And I hope you're happy with whoever that is. Because that would be a special kind of fucking person. No doubt.
It's you and Mr. Depp in that recording, right?
That's correct.
And you're discussing what happened in the Bahamas in December of 2015, right?
No, that's not correct. We were discussing a part of it.
You're discussing when you screamed at Mr. Depp in front of his children, correct?
No, we were talking about a part of that argument.
Including when you screamed at Mr. Depp in front of his children.
That's not a fair characterization of what happened.
Mr. Depp says you screamed at him when he accidentally spilled wine on you, correct?
I realize that's what Johnny said.
Yeah, and Mr. Depp tells you that this freaked out his son, Jack.
Johnny often used other people to back him up in our arguments.
You don't seem too concerned about that, do you?
I had a lot of concerns.
You don't mention Mr. Depp sexually assaulting you in this recording, do you?
That was not the point of that conversation. If I had gotten into the details of what happened to me with him, it would have been another fight.
You just accused Mr. Depp of, quote, using his kids, right? In that recording.
He would often use other people, yes.
And you challenge him to find a woman who will not, quote, jump up and scream if she has been spilled on 3 times in a row.
That is correct.
Not a woman who would put up with sexual abuse, right?
I was pointing out the ridiculous nature of him expecting me not to react to something that basic.
Ms. Heard, you've testified repeatedly that you were concerned about Mr. Depp's substance use during your relationship, right?
Yes, that's correct.
But you weren't concerned enough to stop using drugs and alcohol yourself, were you?
I did not use drugs when I was with Johnny, like in his presence, aside from the times I testified about with you.
So you weren't concerned enough to stop using drugs and alcohol the times you testified to in front of this jury, right?
As I testified to earlier, I took drugs in Johnny's presence on those 2 occasions, early in our relationship in 2013.
So you never changed your own behavior to support Mr. Depp in his sobriety, did you?
I did a lot of changing to support his sobriety. I tried everything that I could possibly think of.
But you drank wine around Mr. Depp on a regular basis, correct?
I did drink wine.
And you took Mr. Depp to Hicksville to do, quote, laughy drugs like mushrooms, end quote, right?
That's correct.
And you testified that despite what supposedly happened in Hicksville, You decided to take MDMA with Mr. Depp on a plane to Russia in June of 2013, correct?
As I mentioned, those are the two occasions.
You testified that this was the last time you would make that mistake, right?
That is correct.
And when asked if you would ask Mr. Depp to get you MDMA in Australia, you said that was, quote, ridiculous, right?
That is correct.
Because you had learned your lesson the hard way on the plane to Russia.
Russia, yes, that's correct.
Yours and Mr. Depp's wedding in the Bahamas was in February of 2015, right?
That is correct.
So that would have been after the Russia flight.
Yes, when I did, when we had mushrooms on the island for my hen party, my wet bridal party before. We were not with Johnny. I was not with Johnny at the time.
It was your wedding with Mr. Depp on the island, right?
To be clear, we were both on the same island. We just weren't around each other that evening. We had kind of separate parties, a bridal party and a groom's party.
And your wedding was a month before Australia, correct?
That is correct.
And you arranged to have drugs at your wedding, correct?
Like I said, we had mushrooms for my bridal party beforehand.
On the island for your wedding?
Before the wedding.
On the island?
On the island, yes.
Okay. This is an email you sent on February 1st, 2015, correct?
That is correct. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. This is a schedule for your wedding weekend, right, Ms. Hurd?
No, it's not. It's a proposed draft of a schedule. It ended up being quite different.
Do you see where it says 7 p.m. rehearsal dinner?
Yes, I see that.
And the next item on the list says, quote, after dance party and drugs and music, end quote, right?
That is correct.
So you plan to have drugs at your wedding to someone you characterize as a drug addict?
To be fair, we were going to have separate parties, as I mentioned. So a bridal party before this, the schedule ended up changing quite a bit. And this is a draft, clearly, that was sent before there were a lot of changes made.
Your original idea was to have a rehearsal dinner with your husband, the drug addict, the monster, and then do drugs with your girlfriends on the island after your rehearsal dinner?
I realize that's what the email suggests, but that wasn't
No,
a
it's
plan.
not what it suggests, Ms. Hurd. It's what you said in that email.
Right, but what I'm trying to say is that the schedule ended up changing. We ended up doing the little,
So your
as I
original
called
idea
it,
was
cuddle
to do
puddle
drugs.
before.
Yeah, your original idea was to do drugs on an island after your rehearsal dinner to the drug-fueled monster that you were about to marry, right?
As the email suggests, there was going to be weed on the island.
You like to do drugs on special occasions, right, Ms. Hurd?
I have before.
And you did drugs again for your 30th birthday, right?
That is correct. That was a huge mistake.
Your 30th birthday dinner was on April 21st, 2016.
Yes, it was the day before my birthday, correct.
And you testified that Mr. Depp was running late to the celebration, correct?
That is correct.
And you asked Mr. Depp to bring you alcohol when he arrived. Is that right?
So the utility closet where we kept the wine was right by the elevators, and I also told him he could bring in a joint. I wouldn't bite his head off if he did.
So that's a yes.
That's correct. I told him I wouldn't be angry.
Plaintiff's Exhibit 1263. This is a text message that you sent to Mr. Depp, correct?
That is correct.
And you sent this message to Mr. Depp the day you had your 30th birthday dinner, right?
That is correct.
And you write, quote, hey baby, bring up something to drink and or a joint. I'm in if you are. See you in a minute, question mark, XX. Did I read that right?
That is correct.
And then the next day you went to Coachella and consumed MDMA and mushrooms, right, Ms. Hurd?
I did. Johnny was not there for that.
Let's talk a little bit more about your 30th birthday. You testified about this incident multiple times, haven't you?
That is correct.
But yesterday you told this jury that you were not called upon to provide a detailed accounting of all physical and sexual abuse by Mr. Depp until February 2020. Is that correct?
I testified that I had not been able to do so until February 2020 in outside of the context of a cold deposition.
Actually, I misspoke. February 2022, this year.
Right. Sorry, I did the same thing you did.
Okay. And you did that in something called an interrogatory. Is that correct?
The interrogatory response was the first time that I could do that outside of the context of being asked certain questions in the deposition.
And you testified about your 30th birthday in this interrogatory, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Nonetheless, you testified to a new detail about your 30th birthday for the first time in this courtroom, didn't you?
No, that's incorrect.
A sexual assault, no less.
I had just not placed when that happened. I was never sure if that was the same time that he did that on the night of my birthday. And I maintained that as well in my deposition.
You told this jury that the evening of your 30th birthday dinner, Mr. Depp, quote, grabbed you by the pubic bone, pubic area, end quote, pushed you down, right?
That is correct.
This detail isn't in your interrogatory response, is it, Ms. Heard?
That detail is in my interrogatory response, yes.
Let's pull up your interrogatory response. These are signed under the penalty of perjury, correct?
That is correct.
And you testified again to this jury that this was the first time you were given an opportunity to write down everything and include all your evidence, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So let's go to page 57. At the top of page 57, Johnny and I were not in a good place. I begged him to make my birthday dinner. Do you see that?
That is correct.
Okay. So starting on page 57, you start describing your birthday dinner, correct?
That is correct.
All right. On page 59 of your interrogatory response, you write, Johnny grabbed me while holding me down, and I remember him asking me if I thought I was so tough. He asked me 3-4 times up close to my face, you're so tough. Are you such a tough guy, huh? You think you're so tough. What are you going to do now? I stood up at some point after getting off the ground. Do you see that?
That is correct.
And then you write after, I remember crying. I remember feeling exhausted and frustrated. And it hit me, meaning the realization of how sad it was that I was going to wake up tomorrow on my birthday without him.
That's correct.
Where in this interrogatory response, Ms. Heard, you describe Mr. Depp, quote, grabbing you by the pubic bone, pubic area, and pushing you down?
On page 64, Johnny grabbed me once, did this taunting thing on the side of the bed in penthouse 3. He grabbed my vagina and held me there, asked me if I was so tough.
You're not describing what happened after your 30th birthday?
I am. I just had not prescribed it to that date with the limited evidence I had at the time. Only in the course of looking at the evidence, preparing for this case, have I put those two pieces together. But I've always said what happened.
You were upset that Mr. Depp was late to your 30th birthday, weren't you?
I was.
You knew Mr. Depp had a scheduled business meeting or a money meeting that evening, right?
No, I knew he said he did. I didn't know if he had one. Addicts lie all the time.
So you didn't trust him?
I took it with a big grain of addict salt.
Okay. And Mr. Depp texted you that evening to let you know he'd be late, correct?
Yes, he did text me at some point.
It was a big deal to you that Mr. Depp was late to your birthday dinner, wasn't it?
Yeah, it did matter to me.
And you were upset he was late.
I was hurt.
And when he finally did arrive, you felt, quote, invisible to him, right?
I did.
The day after your birthday dinner, you and your friends went to Coachella to celebrate your birthday. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You made a video driving to Coachella with your friends, didn't you?
That is correct.
This is the video you made when you drove to Coachella with your friends for your 30th birthday, right?
That's correct. I'm not quite sure which one of us made the video, but that's correct.
You're featured in that video, driving.
That's correct.
And it's set to the song Miss You by the Rolling Stones, is that right?
That's correct.
That was a message for Mr. Depp, wasn't it?
No, that's ridiculous.
You consumed drugs at Coachella, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You took MDMA and mushrooms at the same time.
I did, yes.
And it made you feel sick, right?
I felt horrible, yes.
So you left Coachella.
Yes, that's correct.
You testified yesterday that when you left Coachella, you left with, quote, your entire group.
That is correct.
And you were, quote, never alone with Starling, right?
That is correct.
You weren't anywhere near him.
Not alone, no.
You sat here when Starling Jenkins testified that he collected you from Coachella when you were sick, right?
He picked up my entire group.
And Mr. Jenkins testified, quote, I collected her, got her in the vehicle. She didn't want anyone else to know that she was sick. Take her back to the Parker alone. I took her to the 7-Eleven where I retrieved hydrating fluids, Advil, and let her have those. Got her back up to the Parker, got her in the suite, and then went back to pick up everyone else. You were there when Mr. Jenkins testified, right?
Yes, he was wrong.
So it's your testimony that Mr. Jenkins is lying.
He's just wrong. I don't know what his intentions are. He was just wrong about that. We were a big group of us. I wasn't alone with him.
Isn't it possible that you don't remember correctly because you were sick from taking MDMA and mushrooms at the
No.
same time?
I remember everything about that night.
I'd like to play for you Plaintiff's Exhibit 1229, which is already in evidence.